The following segments are pre-recorded and sponsored by Longworth Productions.
Community engagement on Triad Today. Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to a special edition of Triad Today. Over the next half hour as we focus on community engagement, we meet with several outstanding leaders, inspiring leaders. This program, of course, we're coming to you once again from the beautiful Senior Botanical Garden in Kernersville, and this program brought to you in part by the good folks at Ground Game Innovations. Joining me is a familiar face. He's on Triad Today every week on the roundtable, but now he brings together this special group. Keith Granberry, founder of Helping Hands Consultants. Good to see you again, buddy.
Good to see you, Jim.
The election cycle of 2024 is behind us, one way or the other.
Right.
And one way or the other, people on both sides were all engaged. They were enthusiastic about their candidate, and they let's do this and do that, be active in the community. Well, that's behind us. How do people and how should people stay engaged 24/7?
Well, this election was one that was a little difficult for many people and exciting for some. But after the national election, there are many local elections that affect people each and every day. And I think people should be just as engaged on local politics as they are in national politics. I know millions and billions of dollars are being spent to engage people, to educate people, but we need people on the grassroots level going out each and every day, communicating issues that are important to the people and their families.
Letting their city council and their board of commissioners know what's on their mind, letting their state legislators know, right?
Well, not only that, but voting on city council members, voting on local elections, voting for state reps, voting for state senators. You know, one of my dearest friends and sister, Dee Dawkins Hagler, who's going to be on the show, was the leader of the Georgia Black Caucus. She helped enact laws that affected communities, and that's what we need when we're talking about staying local and engaging local.
Yeah, you mentioned Dee, and of course we have some more special guests coming, including one that's coming right up and just after this quick break. Robert, we call him Bob Brown. He's a legend.
Yes, sir.
And Keith and I'll be meeting with Bob in just a minute, so stay tuned.
Spartans are the teachers, artists, nurses, scientists, and leaders who build our communities.
Back now on this special edition of Triad Today, and a very special guest in this particular segment that Keith and I welcome. Keith's a longtime friend of Bob Brown. I met him when Keith brought him to the studio, I guess about 10 years ago. Robert, we call him Bob Brown. Founder and CEO of B&C Associates. I call him the father of DEI. Good to see you, Bob.
Good to see you.
Your company that you started in 1960 would advise corporations on how to deal with race matters and hiring and diversity before anybody talked about it as diversity. Martin Luther King had a problem with Seal Test Company not hiring people of color. And he asked you, Martin Luther King asked you for your help. How did you help him?
Well, I got them together talking, and I gave some advice to Seal Test. And I talked to some people who knew the top people at Seal Test, and I had them to talk to them. And it all seemed to came together.
You're a great advisor in that, and I think that people don't really understand how much of an impact you've had on the culture of this country. But you also had direct access to President Nixon, were part of his inner circle during his first administration. The two of you worked together to accomplish some pretty important things, especially for the black community, for enterprise and things like that. How so?
Well, we started the Minority Enterprise Program in the country, where and set up an agency to help black businesses. Because as a young black businessman at the time, I knew that there were all kind of roadblocks for young blacks who were trying to do business, and you just couldn't get in. And I asked the president to help, And he said, you put it together. And so I put together a whole stream of things.
Which included
including an
making,
agency.
making sure businesses had access to federal contracts.
All of that.
Oh, yeah.
All of that. None of that existed before.
No, I think it's great. Keith, I know, wants to talk to you a little bit about international things, global things, and because you two have worked together on a lot of trips.
Oh, yeah. He's been with me a long time.
Mr. Brown, one of the things that we have done in our travels in Africa, and you were one of the few people that actually saw Mandela when he was in prison, but you brought a lot of companies to South Africa. Talk to the people about why it's important to work with other countries and doing business.
Well, I think it's important because everybody has something to bring to the table. And to some people, it may not seem to be important, but they don't understand the whole picture. If you're in a game, as we are in America, we need some help from everybody. We need some resources from everybody all over the world. Maybe a little country down in Africa somewhere, nobody ever heard of or thought of them, anything. But you may have a company over here who's producing something vital to our economy, that the resources for those products come from Africa. And so one of my things has been over the years has been working with major companies is, and all of them have these types of problems, is working on those kind of problems all over the world, in Russia and Africa and all over Asia, everywhere.
You've done so many things to facilitate economic development, both here and abroad, as Keith was talking about. I guess before time runs out on us, I remember from reading in your book, which you were kind enough to sign many years ago, and it's called You Can't Go Wrong Doing Right. You can still get this on Amazon. I hope you will. But your grandmother, Nellie, just sort of wrap up for us and tell us some things you learned from her that have held you in good stead as an advisor. She had to have some impact on you, otherwise great leaders wouldn't have come to you for advice over the years. So what impact did Nellie have?
Well, the impact she had on me, she gave me enough advice and knowledge, basic understanding of people and everything to be able to reach out and give it to other people all over the world. I've been in Africa and Russia and China and all over. And into major American companies. I served on the board of many of the biggest companies in the world. And, but what she always told me, she said, you do the right thing, Bobby. Just do the right thing. Treat everybody right. And she said, go follow that path and you can't go wrong.
And I'll tell you, you've done remarkable things. And Keith, I'll embarrass you and put you on the spot. Give me 10 or 15 seconds on what this man has meant to you.
He's meant everything to me. He's a mentor, father figure who has trained me and guided me all my career. I've always been able to consult with him. He sent me places I never dreamed of going. I mean, I've been to almost every continent on this earth based on the fact that Mr. Brown has been my mentor and has guided me. So I'm so thankful for everything he has done, not only business-wise, but political-wise as well. And I'm always at his house eating, so he's also a great cook.
So he has nurtured you in many ways.
That's right.
Really, folks, I hope you'll get this book. It's still available. You Can't Go Wrong Doing Right by Bob Brown. Bob, thanks for being here again, sir.
Thank you.
One more thing I want to add, if I could.
Sure.
I also want to give a shout out to his beautiful wife, Joy, who's probably going to be listening to this, who's a dentist, and she's a great businesswoman in her right. So I want to give a shout out to her.
She is his boss.
She is his boss, right?
Joy,
exactly. Joy, that's right.
Joy, see, Keith got that in, Joy, because you know why? You know why Keith said that, Joy? I'm looking right at her because he's afraid you wouldn't feed him.
That's exactly right. I need to come and get something to eat.
We have some more special guests coming up. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you that Triad Today is now streaming on WFMY Plus, available free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Back now on this special edition of Triad Today as we talk about community engagement and talk with some real leaders in their respective communities. Keith Granberry back with us again, founder of Helping Hands Consultants. Our special guest on this segment, Dee Dawkins-Hagler. She's author, pastor of AME Church, former Georgia State Representative. And I said, author, let me see one of your books. See, I brought this because it's called Empower Her, but she's written a whole bunch of books, and you can get them on Amazon, that type of thing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us about your background, where you were born.
Yes, I was actually born in New York, but I was raised in South Carolina. My mother is a veteran. My father is a veteran. My mother's actually a disabled veteran. I'm a registered nurse. And I was just raised with values of loving each other and doing good in the community. So
Role models?
Role models. So my role model was actually a shift between my grandmother, who was a union activist back when she was young, and my mother, who was the first Black woman elected to city council in my city. So the first Black, first woman, first Democrat.
You cross over into the worlds of politics and religion at the same time. Why the dual interest?
Because I think that the Black church shapes the conversation for politics. I mean, there's nothing I think is apolitical in this country, and I also think there's nothing that God does not exist in. Our country was based on "In God We Trust," even though sometimes the acts are not as godly as I think they should be.
Right.
So for me, I fuse the two interests, which are usually male-dominated fields, and I just took a path that led me down faith and politics.
Keith?
Dee, I know you talk a lot about politics, but you do a lot of international work. Can you talk to the viewers about what you do internationally as well? And you have an organization as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I do a lot as it relates to global impact, public policy, diplomacy, making sure that people can do businesses in Africa and the Caribbean. My organization is called actually the Organization of World Leaders, OWL Inc., and basically is a consortium of leaders in the areas of business, finance, politics, religion, education, health, that come together to help set policy or to bridge the gap between America and those on the continent of Africa and the Caribbean. And it also has standing within the United Nations. So my organization is affiliated and it has standing as an official body of the United Nations.
So when you're doing that, a lot of businesses who want to do business in Africa, they can reach out to you if they want to do business there and kind of get someone who understands the culture, but also understand the business practices of that country. Is that what happens?
Absolutely, and you're a key factor in that as well. We have traveled to many countries helping people to seal the deal, whether it is South Africa, whether it is Rwanda, whether it is Botswana, whether it's Eswatini now that has changed their name. So we are on the ground, boots on the ground, and we help people win elections, whether it's Malawi or whether we are in Nigeria. That's what we do. We make things happen.
That's exactly right.
You know, what lessons have you learned? Because I know you've faced a lot of obstacles in your career. You've won races, you've lost races, and you've worked hard for people. Well, what are some of the things you've learned on your journey?
I've learned that I never lose. Even when I don't win, I win. Does that make sense? Because you learn each trial, each test makes you stronger for the next one, and you'll know how to go back out and then go and dust yourself off and start again. I think that some of the greatest leaders, some of the greatest inventions that were ever started because people did not get it right the first time. And I always tell people, if you run for office several times, or if you run, start businesses over and over, and people say, well, why'd you do that? You can say, well, did I win the first time, or did it succeed the first time?
Right.
So you don't stop. If you have it within you, the tenacity to do it, you just keep going, because those are lessons that will carry you throughout your life.
Right. I mentioned earlier, before time runs out, Empower Her is just one of many books that Dee has written. And this particular one, which again, her books are still available on Amazon, what was this one about? So
this one basically brought together women in the business arena in different levels. So whether they were elected officials who deal with policy, helping you to franchise, some of them help you to start from ground zero, like how to go get a business license, how to do your EIN, how to get grants, or how to go out and level up in your business. I even have people in this particular book who actually walk people through the franchising steps, as well as people who have retired and want to come back and start businesses. And
Right.
so we took all the proceeds from this particular book, and we provide micro grants for women in Africa to start businesses so they can be self-sufficient.
Very good. Well, now you're going to stick around because at the end of the program, you and another special guest, and Keith and I, we're going to have a little roundtable about some issues. All right, we'll be right back.
Baby, watch me fly. Baby, watch me soar. Baby, watch me fly. I will open up the sky.
Fly local, fly easy, fly PTI.
Back now on this special edition of Triad Today, Keith Granberry and I exploring some topics with some great leaders in their own communities and throughout, even globally. And one of the leaders that we're with right now is Michael McKinney. He's Executive Director of Piedmont Business Capital. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell folks where you were born. Where'd you grow up? What did your parents do?
Fantastic. Well, I'm from the eastern part of the state, small county, Wayne County, Mount Olive, North Carolina, home of Mount Olive Pickle. You may have heard of Mount
Right,
Pickle, which is probably every citizen's in the city's summertime job growing up. My parents, my mother was a manager for Burlington Industry, which many people probably don't remember Burlington Industry.
Yeah.
It was one of the biggest employers in town. And my dad, of course, was military. He's deceased and gone on, but
What branch of the military?
he was in the Army.
Okay.
He was in the Army, and I served there for 23 years, actually.
Well, now, who or what sort of led you to a career or had an influence in you going into a career? You've done banking and business capital and this kind of thing. Who had an impact on steering you that way?
Well, you know, it's interesting you should ask. I actually started my career in Wayne County as a real estate agent many, many years ago. I was a young person who thought he could conquer the world, and I met up with someone who was very wealthy, and he and I became partners, and I went to school and got the real estate license and worked in the real estate industry, which eventually led me into the finance arena.
Right.
I wound up relocating here to Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's where it all began. And so it was an exciting path.
Keith, I know you want folks to know more about his company, right?
Yeah. Well, what is the mission of PBC, Mike? I know you have been a person who has started a lot of businesses and been very, very successful in that realm. So what is the mission of PBC?
Well, you know, Piedmont Business Capital is a CDFI, a community development financial institution. We're basically a community bank. We provide source of capital to small, low to moderate income and minority business that have long been denied access to capital by standard and traditional banks. And the idea is to help build wealth to those low to moderate income folks who will be otherwise denied access to be able to do that. And so we've touched the lives of a lot of small businesses. We provide technical assistance. We show them how to put together a business plan, which is the roadmap to keeping your business growing and successful. And then we provide the access to capital to help them to get to where they're going, to sustain their businesses, to grow and expand their businesses.
So why is it important for minority businesses to have an organization like this to be able to help them? Why is that important?
Well, you know, historically, if you look back at small minority businesses, the bar has been much higher in terms of what they have to meet and achieve in order to have the same level of access to capital as some of the other folks on the other side. And because systematically there are systems in place that would deny or block or make it difficult for low to moderate income or minority borrowers from a business perspective to be able to get that capital to do what they need to do in their businesses. And in fact, whereas you look at some of your more popular and the majority of your borrowers on the business arena, they don't have to meet that bar at the same level minorities or low to moderate income borrowers.
It's like the old joke about if you're wealthy, you can get a loan.
Absolutely.
If you don't need the money, you can get it.
Absolutely. And not only that, you look at a lot of the low to moderate income borrowers and business owners. Well, you know, a number of them may have some bad credit. Why? And maybe because the systems that have been put in place that keeps them from having good credit. And so there's some things that we take into consideration that your traditional bank isn't. Like, what are the extenuating circumstances that may have caused them to have a negativity on their credit? Is it not because they won't pay? Maybe they have just had roadblocks put in their way that wouldn't allow them to perform at the same level their counterparts are.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you mentioned when you and Keith were talking a minute ago about things that you do for people in the business. Very quickly, before we lose time, give me an example of something you help people with outside of course, with the capital itself, but a service or something.
Well, number one is making sure that business is structured properly, has a legal structure, whether it's an LLC, a C Corp, S Corp, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure it's properly structured. They have the EIN number. We want to make sure that there is a solid business plan with a 3 to 5 year projection of income, where their income's going to come from, and who's their targeted market, how they're going to make that income happen.
You're going to hold my hand through this thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because what happens, what we discover is if we give money and then they run into an obstacle, many small businesses, because they're afraid, don't know what to do, may not come back to the borrower.
Right.
They'll take off and run, and then the business shuts down. We want to see the business thrive and grow.
Absolutely.
And so when that happens, we go, well, what is the problem? Let's figure out what the problem is so we can find a solution.
All right, if you would, I want you to hang around because coming up in just a minute or so, we'll bring Dee back in here and the four of us have a discussion about some issues facing us.
It will be my pleasure.
All right. We'll be right back after this. Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you to catch my column Longworth at Large and Yes Weekly every week. It's available throughout the Triad, or you can go online, yesweekly.com. Back now in the special edition of Triad Today, and we've brought back the whole gang here, Dee and Mike, Keith and I, just to talk about a couple of issues real quick that are on people's minds. I've earlier referred to the great Bob Brown as the father of DEI, but DEI could be in some trouble. A lot of companies are trying to cancel DEI programs. Some in Congress would like to make sure that doesn't happen, but we don't know. I guess I'd throw this open to both of you. What do we do to make sure it restores and that we keep DEI programs, or should we?
Well, I think DEI programs are very important, especially for people who are minorities in America. I think it's very disingenuous for some people who may be Republicans who are African Americans or Hispanic to now say that DEI has no place in America, when many of them receive their positions because of DEI, whether it was stated or understated. It's a fact that that's how they got it, because they may have filled a quota that they didn't even realize they were filling themselves. And so I think that in order for it to maintain its standing, people have to have the will to want it to be there. I think it's a talking point now, and I think people are using it as being scapegoated, when I really do think it is a great equalizer.
Yeah, there's some on the right, Mike, that have been pushing this and telling companies, almost like blackmailing these companies, we'll boycott you or something if you don't, we get rid of DEI. So they're under pressure, right?
Well, they are, but, and that's unfortunate, because really the consumer, whatever the product is, like to see people in that industry that look like them. Years ago, when I worked for a bank, I invented, or I created a mentoring program to bring more minorities into the corporate setting, and then a way to keep them on the belt. Because what happens in many occasions, we bring them in, we don't know how to connect that culture and keep them in the fold. And so we have discovered that companies perform better when there's a diverse in thinking and in background and culture. It just makes it a richer environment. And unfortunately, if they get rid of that, I think they'll see sales and profits diminishing.
So it's a bottom line issue too. Keith?
Well, number one, DEI is important. Look at statistics. The number of black CEOs in the country, the number of black women CEOs in the country, the income differences. There's so many differences when it comes to minorities, and I think you need programs like that, especially these small businesses, to get their foot in the door. I think it's incredibly important, and I think that America's built on diversity. America's built on people who are diverse, but also now we understand there's been some differences in America, and we've been working to bridge that gap, and that's why I think it's so important to keep it.
Yeah, I mentioned this book earlier, Empower Her, just one of many books that Dee's written. Let me just hone in on women for a second. We did not elect a woman president for the second time in 8 years. I won't get into the prejudices of that, which don't necessarily have to do with race. I think they have to do with gender. But second time in 8 years, and only a handful, as we alluded to, a handful of women CEOs. What do we do to, as you said in your book, what do we do to empower women to change this whole perspective?
some of this changes, I hate to say, but it's going to have to come from men. Men are going to have to continue to reach out and mentor women and put them in positions where they can attain a certain level of power or authority, because men, they most of the time they hold the key to breaking that glass ceiling. And then women have to empower themselves, meaning I'm not going to spend a dime in your company. I'm not going to do anything until you understand the worth that we have, because women make up basically about 51% of the world's population, yet we still are underrepresented in boardrooms, in courtrooms, in halls of power, legislative bodies. And so we have to make sure that people understand what we bring to the table. And so I just love to see companies that understand that, because when you look at companies with women usually at the helm, they usually have very good profit margins, because basically women bring a different type of leadership when they come.
Yeah, you're right. I think, men are going to have to drive this train, because as I've said on my program before, I think it's insecure men who don't vote for women. It's insecure men who don't want to work for a woman. They got to get through that, Keith, any thoughts you have on this?
Man, I got a lot of thoughts. I think that this election showed that we still have a long way to go. And I think we also have to overcome a lot of prejudice. And I think you said it's more than just race. And I think if we look in the future, we have to be able to prepare our young people to believe they can be anything they want to be. And I'm talking young girls.
I'm glad you said young people, because you worked with a lot of young people when you were head of the Urban League. You mentioned mentoring, Mike. Mm-hmm. What do we do now, before time runs out on this segment, what do we do now to sort of ensure that we're getting the kids going in the right direction?
I think we have to catch them early. We have to start mentoring them early, letting them know that they're empowered to be and grow and do and have anything they want to have, and that it's okay. And I think one other thing we have to think about, women are going to control 2/3 of the wealth we see in this country if they're not doing it already.
Yeah, right.
And then lastly, as we become a more diverse nation, many of the cultures find women to be subservient in their culture. And we have to continue to show them that women are strong leaders, and that, had it not been for women, men probably wouldn't exist today.
Mentoring is the key.
It is key.
And it's not just young people, but when you start mentoring, it has to be not just education, but also several programs, skills training, and so across the board. So if you're looking at mentoring, we got to make sure that as we mentor people, we give them opportunities. You can mentor me all I want, but if you don't have an opportunity, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I'll brag on Keith for a second. You all probably know this, but when he was heading up the Urban League, they had a program for kids that had been expelled, and they were just written off from the school system. And Keith brought them in. He had like a 99-point-something% return rate of getting them back into school. You just have to work at it. As we wrap up here, I want to thank all of you. Of course, Keith, my good buddy that's with us every week on Triad Today, Dee and Mike, and of course Bob was with us. Thanks for all you guys do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, our thanks also to the good folks at Ground Game Innovation. That website address is on screen as well. We appreciate all of you taking your half hour to watch this special program. We'll be back next week with another Triad Today. We'll see you then.